Hey guys, welcome back to Release the Craftin. Patricia here with another episode of Storycraft. I hope you guys are excited because we're still doing viewer requests this month. And this one is brought to you by my lovely friend Joy. I reached out to her personally because I knew she was going to come up with a banger. And you guys, I think you're going to love this because Joy requested the Ballad of Tam Lin, which is amazing. And if you don't know, I'm going to tell you all about it. The Ballad of Tam Lin is a Scottish ballad, like an old Scottish ballad, and I'm talking ballad like the long story songs that they used to sing to people. Don't worry, I'm not gonna sing it to you guys. I can't actually sing. Shocking, I know. With these pipes, who would have known? I can't sing. I do it anyways, but I'm not going to for the purposes of this story. I'm just gonna tell you guys the tale. This story has been adapted a bunch of times and written down as an actual story, so I did manage to find some versions of that. But I think you guys are really going to like this one. Joy was very passionate in describing the story to me because I was not super familiar with it. Like, I had sort of a general idea of what happened, and we'll talk about it at the end, why I should have known more about this story, because I have been exposed to it previously, but I just, like, it didn't ring any bells to me when she was telling it to me outside of the little, like, snippet blurb I knew about it. So she told it to me very passionately in, like, 10, 15-ish voice memos, which definitely meant I had to do. I had to tell you guys, so I'm really excited to tell you guys the tale of Tam Lin. And you guys might be surprised to know that the story of Tam Lin does not start with Tam Lin. It actually starts with Janet. Janet is the hero of our story. So let's take it on back to the once upon a time in the way, way long ago. We meet our heroine, a young woman named Janet, whose father is a noble person, a person of noble personage. I don't really know his status. I didn't really look him up because he's only a bit player in the story. And what's important to know is that her father owns a lot of land. And in the middle of that land is the forest of Carterhaugh. And this forest is kind of known to be sort of a mystical, enchanted place. There's a lot of, like, spooky stories, a lot of fairy stories about the forest of Carterhaugh. And one story that comes up in particular a lot about this forest is that it's very dangerous for young women to travel alone. In fact, you're not supposed to travel alone there at all if you're a young woman, especially if you're a young unmarried woman. And if you do go there, it's said that you need to bring a gift, because if you don't bring a gift, in exchange for your presence there, Tam Lin will take your virginity. Now, who's Tam Lin, you might be wondering? Well, nobody really knows. All they know is that he might be a mysterious fairy-type elf sort of person living in the woods who just happens to take the virginity of young women when they show up there without gifts. Which I guess, like, if someone just showed up to my house with... No, I wouldn't do that. That's so weird, guys. But that's what Tam Lin does. And Janet has grown up hearing stories of this and how everyone needs to avoid this forest when they have lady bits, because their lady bits are threatened if they don't have a proper gift to leave in exchange for their presence as they pass through the forest. So this already sort of irritates her, more so that it's a bunch of men telling her, like, oh, be careful if you go by that forest. You shouldn't go over that forest. To, like, the point that this starts to, like, bubble up a little bit inside her, even to the point when she, comes of age and her dad is like, here, you can have the forest of Carterhaugh. That will be your special place. Your own little piece of land is the forest of Carterhaugh. This is something I'm going to share with you. And she's like, great. And he's like, but don't go, though, because Tam Lin's gonna fuck you. And she's just like, you know what? I'm actually really tired of hearing this. I'm just gonna go to the woods and prove everybody wrong. This is stupid. How can we own a piece of land I can't go to? That doesn't make any sense. So Janet takes off into the forest, and she's having a merry old time. The forest is beautiful. It's a little magical, secluded space. She's having a great time. And then she notices that there is a huge patch of roses growing next to the well And she's like, this is amazing. These flowers are beautiful. So she's soaking it all in. And then she's like, you know what? This rose right here, this is the prettiest rose I've ever seen. It's this huge, super bloomed out, like double rose. It's gorgeous. It's sparkling. It's dewy. It's very fragrant. She's like, this is the best rose of the patch. She breaks it off the stem, puts it in her hair, and then she hears a voice come behind her, and it says, who is this who would steal my roses in my woods? And she spins around on her heels, and she is confronted by the most beautiful man she has ever seen. He's definitely one of the Fae, because only if it could be this pretty. And she is stunned by his presence, but not by his words. She claps back immediately, and she says, what do you mean, your roses? These are my father's woods. This land belongs to my father. So therefore, ergo, these roses are mine. And Tam Lin, he introduces himself as Tam Lin, and he isn't as irritated as you might think someone would be when they're like, fuck you, this shit belongs to me. He actually finds it very entertaining. And he just strikes up a conversation with her, and they keep talking about it. And she cools off a little bit, and she realizes that he's not a total jerk, and that he might actually be just sort of playing with her and not being like super possessive over these woods. So she chills out a little bit, and they talk, and they're having a good little like chat. And then they do a little bit more than chat, and she goes home. And then she comes back the next day, and then they talk, and then they proceed to do a little bit more than talk. They fuck. They fuck every single day. She goes there, they have a long, hearty chat, they enjoy each other's company, they have sex, she goes home. This goes on for weeks. And it's to the point now where, like, other people have started to notice that Janet is a little bit happier than she used to be. Also, she spends a lot of time away from home. Nobody really asks any questions about that. They don't suspect Carter Haw, because why would a girl go out there, right? Like, you're going to lose your virginity. Why would you go to those woods? It's exactly why I would go to those woods. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about Janet. She went there for the same damn reason. And continues to do this for several weeks until it becomes pretty noticeable and undeniable that she's actually pregnant. Like, the girl is growing, the belly doth swell, and it gets to the point where it's so obvious that her dad is like, sweetness, sweetheart, apple of my eye, who the hell is the dad? Because you said no to every single person I have ever brought over. And I know that you're not married, so who's the father of this child? And she tells them that the father of the child is an elf. And he's like, well, then you gotta get rid of that, because nothing good can come from this union. And she's like, actually, no. I will not be removing this child from my body. And she's like, and I'm not going to denounce his father either. In fact, I'm just going to go get him. So she goes back up to Carter Haw, and she tells Tam Lin, hey, I don't know if you know how this works, but sometimes when a man really loves a girl and they get together, they make a baby. I'm pregnant. I'm really pregnant. Super pregnant. And Tam Lin's like, oh. And she's like, and so if you're a fairy, you need to figure it out. And if you were ever a man, then like you need to step up, because we are having a baby. And he's like, actually, I'm not a fairy. I'm not a fairy at all. I'm just a normal guy. I'm a mortal man. But there's a problem, because you see, in my backstory, I was just a regular, like, nobleman, doing regular nobleman things, riding across my lands on my horse, and one day, my horse went funny, I fell sideways, and I fell so sideways that I found myself in the land of the fairies. And when I awoke there, I was confronted by the fairy queen, who has kept me as her prisoner ever since. She basically told me I wasn't leaving. And things were great for a while. Like, the fairy queen and I really got along. And Jenna at this point's like, yes, wrap it up. I know what you mean. You and the fairy queen got along. I get it. He's like, yeah, but then she kind of got a little bored of me, so she sent me over here, told me that this forest was, where I could hang out and chill, and then she would just call for me when she needs me. But she's been calling for me less, so I kind of feel like she's just saving me for a special occasion. And Janet's like, what possible special occasion? And Tam Lin's like, well, you see, here's the thing. Every 7 years, the fairies have to send a tithe, like a living sacrifice, to hell, at Halloween. And it's about to be Halloween. And since she's saving me here, I'm pretty solid that, she's gonna send me as the tithe instead of, sending another fairy, to be sacrificed. And Janet's like, well, that puts a fucking wrench in my plans. And Tam Lin's like, yeah, I just really don't want to be sacrificed. And, maybe I'm tired of living the fuckboy life in the woods. I don't know. I think it's about time I settle down, do the right thing. But unfortunately, there's no way for me to escape because I can't act against the fairy queen. So Janet's like, okay, so what do I gotta do? And he's like, well, I will be riding in the procession behind her. In fact, I'll be the 11th rider in the procession. Tell you what, I'll just wear one glove. You'll know which one is me, and then you can save me. But also, maybe I should warn you a little bit about fairy magic. And you should know that, no matter what happens, I won't hurt you because I love you. And Janet's like, that's really sweet. But maybe go back to the fairy magic part. So Tam Lin proceeds to tell her how the entire plan should work, how fairy magic works, what she can expect, right? And he sends her home. So Janet goes home, she gets, everything ready that she needs. She gets a big giant cloak, she wears that, she goes to the woods before night falls, and she hides beside the well in the rose bushes, waiting for the fairy procession to go by. And when the fairy procession goes by, she sees the fairy queen, this beautiful, austere woman who is like a bajillion times more pretty and striking than Tam Lin ever was. And now she realizes that she's a little bit dumb for thinking that Tam Lin was a fairy, because this woman, definitely a fairy. Otherworldly beauty, indeed. And she rides by, and then a set of 3 knights ride by, and another 3 knights ride by, and then 3 more knights ride by, and there she sees him, Tam Lin, on his horse, all dressed up as just another knight, but with one glove missing. So as he proceeds to ride by, Janet jumps up, she grabs him off the horse, drags him down, which of course is very noisy when you're in armor. So the fairy queen notices immediately, so she uses her magic to turn Tam Lin First, you guys, she turns Tam Lin into a snake, like a writhing, wriggly snake, and Janet doesn't let go. So then she's like, okay, bet. She turns him into a barking, snarling dog. Still, Janet doesn't let go. So she tries again by turning him into a lion. And Janet does not let go. She puts the bear hug on this lion. And speaking of bears, she also turns Tam Lin into a bear. Janet never lets go. So realizing she's not going to be easily intimidated, the fairy queen decides a different strategy. She turns Tam Lin into a burning coal, and this was the signal that Tam Lin had told Janet to wait for. So once he turns into a burning hot coal, Janet is afraid at first because all this steam is coming up from her hands, but like he said, he loves her, he can't possibly hurt her. She feels no pain, but she takes the burning coal, she drops it into the well. A bunch of steam erupts, and out of the steam comes Tam Lin with the fairy glamour gone, so he's a little less sparkly than he was before, but he's also butt-ass naked. So she takes her cloak, she throws it around him, and he covers his face, and with it, the fairy queen can no longer see him. He's no longer the beautiful man that she was able to see. He's hidden from her eyes, essentially. And so the fairy queen gets angry, but she also sort of is like, okay, fine. You guys went through all of this, fine. I get it. So she curses Tam Lin and tells him, had she known that he would betray her, she would have snatched out his eyes so he could not see the mortal woman who would come to save him. And then the fairy procession continues on. I'm assuming that they have to pick a different unfortunate soul for the fairy tithe, and Janet and Tam Lin are able to return home, at which point she presents this naked man in her cloak to her father, who is relieved when he realizes that Tam Lin is not, in fact, a fairy, but just a normal guy. So they get him some proper pants, and everything works out, you guys. In the end, everybody lives happily ever after. Janet and Tam Lin get married. They have their child, and they get to settle down peacefully. And now young women don't have to be worried about losing their virginity when they go to the forest. And I can imagine that there are several women in the surrounding lands who are probably pretty fucking disappointed that the fuck forest is closed. And that's it, you guys. That's the end. Happy endings for everybody except for that poor person in the fairy court who had to get sacrificed that year and was not prepared for it. But that's the end of this story. It's just like a sweet little story. And like Joy told me when she was telling me about the story, it features, a classic story where the woman does the saving. And I really I love Janet's tenacity to not let go. Like, I would have dropped Tam Lin the second he turned into a snake. Not that I'm afraid of snakes, but like sudden snake, gross. So I don't want it to touch me. So like that happens, and she's like, I'm not letting go of this man. I'm keeping my like sexy future husband, and nobody's stopping me. Like, props to her. Mad props. I absolutely love that she did this. That she managed to like get one over on the fairy queen by disguising him with like a mortal veil using her own cloak. Like, brilliant, amazing. I love her. I love this story. I love that like Tam Lin is sort of a roguish, rakish type character who's just like, yeah, you could bring me a present, or we could fuck every time a girl comes into his woods. I mean, that's making the best of a bad situation, I guess. But I also like that him and Janet, like, get along. Like, she's a very strong-willed, headstrong person. And she was just like, these are my fucking woods. How dare you say anything less? And he's like, okay. I don't really care that much. Like, they just managed to make it work. And I really love that for them. So, it was recommended to me by Joy to read her favorite book, which is a version of this story called Winter Rose, and that's by Patricia McKillip, and I'll put that detail in the comments below. And the thing that like made me go, blah, I should have known this story already, is that I have read a version of this story because one of my favorite authors is Diana Wynn Jones, and she wrote a book called Fire and Hemlock, which is a version of this story, and it just never clicked to me that that's what I was reading because I didn't know it was a fairy tale prior to reading it, I guess. But now I know. So I was like, oh yeah, I do kind of know this story. So I would recommend that. So if you wanted to do some further reading, get a little bit more immersed in this world, there are a lot of versions of this story. And a lot of like modern novels that are based on this ballad. So there's a lot of like different interesting takes there. I was actually really surprised because I like to like check Wikipedia before I do these things to see if there's any like interesting tidbits I can pull out of there to share with you guys. And there were a bunch of books there that like I was like, oh well, maybe if I'm feeling like jumping back into this, I'll read some of these books. But I'm definitely gonna read Winter Rose because my friend recommended that to me. But let me know you guys thought of this one. I really enjoyed it. I don't really have that much to say beyond the fact that there's a bunch of novelizations of it. Because it was just a really straightforward, to the point story. So I hope that you guys really enjoyed this one. And I will catch you guys all in the next one. I believe we get one more viewer request in because May has 5 Wednesdays. I think. I'm not looking at a calendar. So yeah, we'll look forward to that. And if not, we're still going to have a story, so I'll catch you guys in the next one. If you have any requests or stories you want to see on a future episode, let me know in the comments below. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate your faces, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Till then, happy crafting. Bye!